man, we're talking for forever. But, you know, we're talking about enlightenment, and yet we're talking about history. And inside the reform world, there's this huge enjoyment of the Puritans. There's this huge enjoyment of the super sanctified group of people. And yet I don't find many people who are embracing that kind of history of who they actually were and what they were really trying to do. So they don't bring the Puritans into the conversation with them. What I see them doing is trying to take everything back to that, right? Like, so they play dress up,
right?
You know what I mean? And so and instead of, I'm hoping that what I'm building with my family, what we haven't had for 3 generations, I'm hoping by the 3rd generation of my grandchildren or great grandchildren that they're going to be at a place thinking and theologically and in practicing the world that I couldn't have even imagined.
Yeah, that's what we should all want, right?
Not trying to do what I did, right? Like, I want you to take all this information, it's like what David did with Solomon. I want you to take the materials and build with it, not just gather more materials.
Yeah.
Go build the temple. Go make the thing that I was trying to make that I couldn't make. Take that stuff and go make something with it and build with it, and then make it grander, then pass it off to the next generation and let them paint it, and then pass out to the next generation, let them build 3 more. Let them take this and build this even broader. I mean, but I don't think that when we read the Puritans, we aren't trying to reform theology. Reformdom is not trying to build out. It's suffocating itself. It's turning in on itself and only looking at itself. It's separated itself from the world. It's not seeing civilization, and the culture of it has become internal. It doesn't see civil magistrate as an important entity that they're supposed to be prophetic to. I mean, I'll say this again, our church conferences never deal with the role and responsibility of the church to the rest of the culture.
Right. Yeah. And I think, and there's a couple of issues that I think stop us from doing it. One is, it's like God in the Reformed Church, it's like God has given us a giant vat of tiger balm that can go out and comfort and heal the world. And we spend all our time describing it, and we never open it up and go out there and actually heal the world, right?
That's exactly what I said about the SBC. They got this amazing sword, and they always put it on the counter, and they're like, it's the sharpest sword you'll ever see.
Let me tell you about this sword. And
like, how many giants it killed.
Right. It's like, maybe we should go kill some more. Let's go swing it, right? So
Romans 13, Jason, Romans 13. No.
And I think it's unfortunate, right? Spurgeon has a great quote where, and Kierkegaard says something similar, that the word of God is like a lion, and we take our commentaries and we build a beautiful cage around the lion. So and then we describe the cage to people, rather than letting the lion out and letting it roar itself. Right. C.S. Lewis talks about this in terms of, he says, we read about the great texts rather than reading them, as if somehow reading them is too hard for us. And so we have to read people telling us about them rather than reading them. We treat the Bible the same way. We tell people about the commentaries we've read about the Bible rather than just preaching the Bible. So, and Kierkegaard uses the metaphor for the Dutch pastors of his day. He said they before they go to read the Bible, they fill their pants with commentaries so that the Bible doesn't have the ability to spank them.
Ouch!
It's so good, right?
Ouch!
That we, as if the Spirit has promised where His power to recreate the world is. It's in the Word of God, right? The Word that created the world has the power to recreate it, but we put it at a distance and we don't preach it. but then in terms of that generational knowledge, is, I like to think of it as, like, we're captains of a ship called our life, and our job is to, and each of us goes out and crashes it. Or we go out and we shipwreck our lives somewhere, and then God gives us kids and says, now train them how to sail. And our job is to say, okay, let me tell you where some rocks are so that you can get further than me. I crashed here. I crashed on those rocks there. I crashed on those rocks there. So sail straight through those and you'll make it further. And then they're going to crash on some rocks that are further along. And it's their job to then raise up. God will give them people to train to sail. And he can say, okay, your grandpa crashed on that rock, that rock, that rock. I crashed on that rock, and that rock. So sail straight through there, and he can get further along. And then they can say to their kids when they're training them to sail from their shipwreck, okay, your great grandpa crashed there, there, and there. Your grandpa crashed there, there, and there. I crashed here, here, and here. So sail straight through there and make it further, right? We're going to crash our lives. We're sinners. That's why we need the grace of God. Our job, though, is to pass on the knowledge we gained in it while shipwrecking our lives, to the next generation. We don't understand what to do with the guilt and the shame of the fact that we crashed our lives. We don't know how to take it to the cross and leave it there so that we can then turn around and talk about the fact that we shipwrecked our lives in a helpful way, because we're still bound by the guilt and the shame that Jesus took, right? That Jesus took on the cross. And so we don't parent well because we're bound up in the shame and the fear and the guilt of our sin. And so we can't parent from our shipwreck well. And so that's what I'm hoping to do is stand on my shipwreck. Because I think what God does is he pulls a bunch of people that shipwreck their lives together, and each of them provides a piece, and he builds the church out of it, and he builds this glorious ship out of a bunch of shipwrecks. Because we've all torn our sails, and he grabs a piece from each of us and he knits them together into a new sail and builds his church out of shipwrecks, and that ship then sails the world.
If what happened to me when I got into this story in my life, whatever it was, I didn't have those stories of where my forefathers or my grandparents or my parents, I didn't know where they shipwrecked at.
Yeah.
So then I knew, by the grace of God, there are some places I was like, oh, these are hazards. Okay. Right. Here's how you sail through them. The intimate knowledge of shipwreck wasn't apparent to me in my relationships. And so I probably hit some of the same places that they hit in the process. And historically, when you think about this historically, if you don't know the history, then you're going to repeat the same shipwrecks, which I'm starting to see right now. So if that's true the way you're talking about, and I think it is, we are 60 years 76 years now removed from Auschwitz, 60 years removed from the civil rights movement. And both of those two things have almost come back around full circle and to the freest place in the world. So you got Austria, who's repeating it almost exactly right now. You have Germany, who's almost repeating it exactly right now. You have Australians, they're going through it. You have laws now in Canada that won't allow you to proclaim the gospel, the metaphysical structures of a man and woman through, the therapy movement. Now you can't, So, and in America, we're the civil rights of an individual to be able to make their own decisions about their healthcare and lifestyle are absolutely under attack. And then parenting, all that, it's just right back again from the 40s to the 50s, 60s. And it's amazing that the reason we're there, when I look at it, is like the history, just recent history is gone.
Yeah.
let alone covenantal history.
Right.
Right.
We can't identify where we are in the story or what character we are in the story because we haven't read the previous chapters.
And so we don't know. We just think we're coming to it at the beginning of the book, but we're actually being more like you were when telling the story of Jonah. It's like we're actually coming in the middle. The
Yeah,
story's been going on.
stepping right into the middle.
Yeah, and we don't.
And the best thing that you can do is look at your kids and tell them the stories, right? So this is, I know we're heading over 2 hours now, but now it's about to get real, right? So my I got my high school girlfriend pregnant, right? And it was traumatic, hard, difficult. I was a new Christian, and so I suddenly also knew that it was wrong because I didn't before that, and I come home and have to basically tell my parents I got my girlfriend pregnant, right? And it doesn't go well, obviously, right? That's not anything that your parents want to hear, and so I end up, God walks me through it. We lost the baby, and it was really, really hard and difficult, but God used it in really formative ways to, grow me up as a Christian, grow me up as a man, and all sorts of things. How many years later? 15 years later, after my dad had already died, we get a phone call from a guy. I'm your brother, right? Find out my dad had gotten his high school girlfriend pregnant. He never told me. He never told me before. He didn't tell me after, right? None of that. And I look back and I think, would it have been different had my dad said, "Hey, you're in your teenage years, you're looking at girls. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you about my failure." Would it have been different in the moment if I'd come and said, "Hey, this is what happened. I got my high school girlfriend pregnant." And he said, "You know what? I did the same thing. Your life's not over." Because I thought my life was over. It go into deep depression, deep, it's like thinking, okay, my life's over. I may as well give up, just throw my hands up, don't care about anything. And had my dad said, "Hey, same thing happened to me. I made the same mistake. Your life's not over," right? There, because none of that happened, it took years and years for me to deal with the shame and to come to grips with the fact that that every bad thing that happened in my life was not a continual punishment from God, right?
Condemnation heaped upon itself.
Right? Yeah. I didn't understand what to do with the shame involved in it. And so eventually, God brings people and the right books into your life and the scriptures into your life at the right times. And you realize, and you come to understand why it's so important that Jesus died on the cross naked to take our shame, right? That shame is actually gone. It was nailed to the cross, and God doesn't look at us with any, he's not so when some of my favorite verses are, "He is not ashamed to call you brothers." Right. And God gave me an older brother that was amazing, walked me through so many things. And so the fact that Christ is our older brother is also really, powerful to me because of the role that my older brother had in my life, walking me through a lot of these times. But one of the things that I realized along the way was, oh my gosh, I've never told my kids this. And that was what my dad did. And so sit down, my kids, tell them, "Here, let me tell you the whole story. Any questions you've got, any questions you ever have about it later, whatever. This is an open topic. My sin is an open topic for you kids, because I don't want them to make the same mistake, but I also want them to learn the lessons that I learned about shame and fear and guilt
Mm-hmm.
when they're young, right? I want them to always know, what do you do with sin? What do you do with embarrassing sin? You confess it to the Lord. You don't bury it. You don't put it under the carpet. You confess it. That's where the freedom is. And um, the, with the hope being, sail further, right? Sail further than me. Sail further than me. Here's where I shipwrecked. Here, and that that is where we have power and authority, right? Some people have been given civic authority. Some people haven't. When you're a parent, you have covenantal authority, and and if you love your kids well, you also have moral power, more moral authority to speak the good news into their life and to blow wind in their sails,
Mm.
right? So I think that it's easy to get overwhelmed when you look around and you're like, what do I do? Well, you've got kids. Start there. You've got a wife, you've got a husband. You are, when you pray for your spouse, you're praying from the inside, right? You're not
Mm.
praying as an outsider for your spouse. You're praying from the inside for your spouse, for your kids. So you have the authority to bring things before the Lord that you don't have for just a neighbor, right? So um, we always need to start in the place where God has given us uh, the authority to love people well, love people from the inside, and live that hierarchy well in a loving, prayerful way, and then trust that God gives the faithful more when they are faithful with the little that they've been given.
Ain't nothing else I need to say over that. It's done.